So tonight, Ken,
Yes, Dan.
you're right here. We're talking about spring training. What the heck is this all about? Ken, what the heck? You're right here. This guy's right here.
It's amazing. We're in the same space tonight.
And it looks like it might be daylight because there's a couple suns behind us here and here, but it actually is still nighttime.
It is nighttime. This is good evening to everyone.
Where are we? That's the real question. Where are we right
We're in
now?
Phoenix, and it is spring training, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about seasons of life and seasons of business and what each of those seasons means and how we can best use them to our advantage to be in sync with nature.
In Sync. That makes me think of the band In
Right.
Sync.
I,
Sync, doesn't it?
I knew it would.
Yes, In Sync. They're a good band.
So I think, as you know, spring in Phoenix is not necessarily the same as spring in other places where snow is finally starting to melt and there are signs of life emerging. We were just out in the backyard and everything's in bloom. So you have to use a little bit of imagination with where you're at. But I think the thing that really counts is trying to sync ourselves up with what nature has to teach us. And spring is a time for new birth. It's a time for awakening. It's a time for planting. It's a time for growth. And so what can we do in our lives and in our businesses to plant those seeds and to experience the kind of growth that we hope to harvest as the year progresses?
And what's interesting is when I left to come out here, I had gone skiing the day before.
Yeah.
And in fact, it snowed back in the DC area the day I left. So I left them and then it snowed and school was canceled and things happened. And I get out here and it's 75 degrees and it's beautiful. And what's interesting about that to me is the fact that we can just get on a plane and we can switch seasons almost instantly, right? And work with golfers. And there's a golf tournament this week. And golfers have this amazing ability to almost like travel to the seasons that are ideal for them throughout the year. But for the rest of us, right, that aren't professional athletes and we don't have the luxury of constantly looking ahead and being like, where's the most ideal place to do our sport, right?
Right.
To have our performance, we are faced with wherever we chose or circumstantially we ended up living.
Yeah.
And those places, just like they usually have seasons, at least where I'm from, we have seasons, right? And as those seasons change, we talked about like the things that die off and the things that are reborn or that grow and change with it. So I think like the main thought of spring training to me is that I'm out here working with baseball players who are actually about to start spring training. So they're in their preparation for the actual season, right? And so I just think it's an interesting thought process and how we can relate it back to individuals or businesses where we are not always in performance mode. I mentioned that more than once. It's like the performance event, right? Your game.
Yeah.
So they're preparing to then go prepare to then enter their season.
Yeah.
And their seasons where they're actually going to perform.
And yet they're in a season right now, right?
Yes.
This season of preparation or pre-preparation. And I love this because there was a call I had with a client today, and we were talking about running the engine at 100% and what that's been like for him, and the fact that he knows that he would be more productive if he took his foot off the gas. He knows that he would be able to think more clearly and he'd be a better executive at work. He knows all of that. And yet the temptation is, I have to just keep going because if I don't, then I'm not going to get as much done. And I think what the season can teach us is this is that time to back off. It's that time, particularly the winter into, and we're still technically in that, the winter into spring, what that means, that time to back off, to think, to reflect, and to actually give yourself a chance to look at what you've done, look at where you're going, and make sense of it all. This is, to me, that's what this past month has been, just trying to make sense of where I've been relative to where I want to be, and then to ask myself what I can do to plant seeds now that will bear fruit as we move forward.
And if you hear those sounds are a dog that's sitting under the table as we're talking. It's not any of us, okay? Those are sounds of something different.
It's not any dog. It is Dustin, who was the cover boy for the 2021 Boxer Love Rescue calendar.
Congratulations.
He's a star.
Congratulations.
Maybe later he'll do a little guest appearance. Who knows?
Yeah. You know, what made me think was actually really interesting of how much I enjoy certain parts of the year and how much I almost confuse myself. It seems like every year I'm reminded of the exact same thing, which is I look at the turn of the actual year and I almost think like, oh, we're in spring. And it's like, no, we're just starting winter.
Yeah.
Right. But almost like it still confuses my brain. It's an interesting like dynamic. And then when people go back to school, let's say it's August or early September, it makes you think summer's over, but it's like, no, summer's like another month long, right?
Right.
And so it's like always that confusing part of like exactly what season we're in, because the calendar of events don't always line up with the way the seasons of our lives are. And what really made me think about it was a sports season, right? So in a sports season, it's very like defined, right? You'll have the end of the season, right? It's like the end of the season. It's like the Super Bowl that's coming up actually this Sunday, or it's the World Series, or it's whatever, you know, like it signifies like this season is over. In life though, we almost don't have that. So maybe that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for like the end of the year, it's the end of the season, right? And so we're almost like looking for a chance to be able to start over.
So I think for me, it is the change in light that happens in late fall.
Oh, yeah.
That is the thing that triggers it. And I'm not even aware of exactly what day it is, but there's that moment when I'm looking outside and all of a sudden I realize how dark it is and how early it is. And that just shifts it for me. And the other thing is the little guy on the ground, 68 pounds of pure boxer muscle, I might add. We always, in summer, we go for a walk at about 4:45 in the morning, partially because it's Phoenix and you got to go out early. But it's also a great time to be outside. There's something like just really meditative about that for me. And yet, as soon as that darkness kicks in and the temperatures actually drop, and they do in the desert, that 5 a.m. walks gets transferred a few hours later. Everything starts to shift, Dan. And I think that's the reason that it feels so meaningful. That darkness signifies a change in my schedule. I alter my schedule. My morning meditation and routine now happens first, and then the dog walk happens after that. And it might sound like a small thing, but it is that thing that signifies that something's different now. And then there's an opportunity, I think, when things are different, to actually engage new practices.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that in Phoenix, I think in all of Arizona, you don't change for daylight savings time.
No, we don't.
And I know that's probably a point of contention here in Arizona. But I thought that was interesting that you guys don't even do that, because that's actually like almost like a triggering event for most of the world, or for the rest of this country, except for Arizona somehow.
We're special.
Yes, you're special. That actually gives, it's almost like, let's shift time, right? Because like you're talking about, of course, everybody has like shorter days and longer days based on the seasons. But I think that's an interesting thing. You don't even have that. I think what stands out to me though is that we need to, as individuals, I think we need to define for us our own seasons, right? Just the exact same way that a business, what do they have? They're going to have like their fiscal year.
Right.
For some, it's a calendar year. For others, it's like, no, it starts September, for whatever. They pick their time and that's their definition. So there's definitely like changes, right? There's a push for like, let's get our end of year stuff completed. And then it signifies we start over, the numbers start over, right? And it's true, we just talked about in sports, but for individuals, other than the new year, which we have prior conversations about, the new year signifies it, but it's almost like unless we're intentional about finding something that we go, no, this is our end of season. Or even better is that just like in life, we have 4 seasons. I think people should break it down in that kind of way, like look at things seasonally in their own life.
So I think the reason that works so well is because then it becomes digestible bits, right? You break it down into quarters basically. And I would think about what are the characteristics that you associate with traditional seasons. Let's take Phoenix out of the mix for a bit because we don't have them. So if you think about traditional seasons, wintertime, you think about that time to go within. You think about quiet. You think about stillness, accentuated in places in the country where there's snow, where it just dampens sound. And so it is that time to meditate and think. Spring, you think about the thaw and you think about new life starting to pop up, and you think about what's to come and an opportunity to plant. And summer, you think about things in full bloom and growth and the warmth of the sun. And then autumn, you think of the harvest, like all that work from the preparation to the planting to the growing. Now the harvest is here. And so I would encourage people to think about what they can do to relate that to their lives and to their businesses.
Did you want to let him out?
You want to go out, buddy?
There you go. There you go.
Go ahead. It's okay. All right. He's gotten very uppity since he's become a cover boy. It's just like, yeah, I want to go out now. Open the door for me. Whatever.
No, I like what you're saying. And I don't think, I would say almost zero people look at life that way. But if we almost break it down the same way that these athletes are breaking it down right now, we'll just use the baseball players, right? So they're in preparation for spring training. So it's preparation for preparation. And I've always liked, we've talked about this in many podcasts, where I like to chunk things down to threes because I think that's a very digestible. It's like small, medium, large, good, better, best, right? So like that. So 3 months is a very digestible thing.
Also works in comedy.
Right? That's true.
It's true.
The Holy Trinity. All sorts of things. A lot of goodness in threes. But anyway, 3 months, that quarter that you just talked about, I think if you were to take the 3-month quarterly concept, that you could look at it just like the seasons, and you could look at like, this is my planting season, right?
Yeah.
This is my growth season. This is my
harvest season.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting way to look at it. And I think it does align well. And I think people don't have to align with any sort of pre-designated time period. They get to choose what it is.
Right.
Like they can say, I like this 3-month increment thing. And I would encourage you, this is also what we talked about before. It's like, you don't have to wait. So if today is actually February 2nd when we're recording this, you can say, oh, wait till March 1st. No.
Start now.
Yeah. Start now. Right.
Start now. You can define, and your business may actually have some built-in seasons that are very different from seasons in nature. It doesn't matter. You get to define it yourself as long as you think in those terms of that quiet and reflection time, of the planting, of the growth, and of the harvest. And just align those with whatever works for your life and whatever works for your life in business.
So let's talk about what that means. So what does it mean for somebody? Let's just go from season to season.
Yeah.
Which is the first season that you think somebody should start with?
I start with winter because it's preparation and going within.
Okay.
It's quiet.
What does that mean to an individual person to start with winter?
Yeah. So I think it means planning time and being intentional about taking time out to think and to reflect, to take stock of where you are, to like, I always talk about like who I am and who I really am. Who I am, like sort of all of that affect that I put on for the world, that I think people want to see of me. And then in those moments of just like raw, real honesty where you go, but I know who I really, really am. I'm talking about that kind of reflection and thinking about how can that be best expressed in the work that I do and the life that I live. So that's what I think about.
So that's winter.
That's winter.
What comes after winter?
Well, after winter,
spring
comes spring.
Spring.
And what does spring mean to you?
Things start to grow.
Yeah. But they only start to grow if you do what?
Plant.
There you go.
But how do we plant in our lives? Like, what does that mean? Yeah. I get the reflection part.
Yeah.
And I get like this, I'll say strategic part, right? So we get to reflect back. We get to set some strategies. We're preparing. But now we're planting. What does planting mean for an individual?
So I think planting can just mean picking up the phone or sending an email or having a conversation with somebody. I as people can probably tell by some of the things I've said and by the fleur-de-lis up on the wall, I have a great love of France. My husband and I go every year except this one passed. And, one day we want to spend a big chunk of time there. I was watching a recording from a church in Paris on Christmas Eve, and I literally just sent an email to one of the priests and said, I'd just like to talk to you about some stuff. And just shared with him my desire to, possibly do some work there, do some consulting work, ask what that might be like, see if he had any connections. We talked for half an hour and he gave me like 3 solid ideas to go on. So that to me was planting. Just that simple outreach that, turned out to be a really valuable piece.
So when I think about it, as you were saying that about for sales, right? So it's like winter can be the time where I'm putting together, like, what are my target markets? What are my areas of focus, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back to prior years, like what worked, what didn't work, how, like to we're preparing. And then in spring, I can be starting my reach out, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I'm sending emails and making phone calls. I'm planting those seeds to see what will happen later.
Right.
So now we're into summer.
Right.
Things have started to bloom.
And
right?
some things haven't.
Yeah.
And some things haven't. Right. And so from a business perspective, you're looking at those things that are growing up beautifully. And maybe the question is, why are these working really well? And why did those other seeds that I planted seem not to take root? What was it about them? And what lessons can I learn from it?
And so last time I was I was here a year ago, but prior to that, I was here in August and it was 110 degrees.
Yes.
And I was asking you about your backyard and all the beautiful plants and everything you have. And I was like, does this stay green?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that impressed me most, and it was almost like I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is fake grass. Not yours, but I saw grass. And I was like, this is fake grass. I'm like, no, it's real. It was so incredible because this is the perfect, like the most perfect temperatures and everything. That grass is unbelievable and amazing, right? But if you put it at 110 degrees, it takes a lot more to keep it going. And I think that's what like summer is, right? Like certain things have worked.
Yeah.
But now you got to nurture them. You got to keep them going or they're going to die off.
So
right?
We got a secret about the grass.
Okay.
So
what is it? You spray painted it green?
Around October,
okay.
The gardener comes and he scalps the lawn with the mower. The mower's on like the lowest setting and it basically takes it down to just stubble.
Okay.
And then he plants something called winter grass.
Okay.
And the winter grass then grows up to this beautiful green color that you see. And then around March, the winter grass starts to die off.
Okay.
And the grass that was there before comes back up and grows beautifully all through the summer again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what they do at the Masters at Augusta National in Georgia.
Yeah.
So they were preparing. They had November Masters this year. Usually they play in April. It's only because of the COVID stuff, or in 2020.
Right.
And so people were taking aerial photography of the course, and they were a month out. And it was like, I can't believe this is the most beautiful course in the world, and it's brown. And they did exactly what you said. And those people never knew that. They're like, oh, no, it's because we chopped off, like scalped down to thing, and they replanted new grass. So fast forward like a week or two later, they're like, oh, it's green and beautiful again. And it all started sprouting, and it was ready to go.
But think about that. It's like they figured out that for, 8 months of the year, that grass that will grow in extraordinarily high heat will not continue to grow in low heat. Because a week ago, you missed our 27-degree day, and that grass was not going to perform in that. And so what they learned in the desert was, we'll just reseed, right? So, and I think that is applicable to the conversation, because sometimes if something is going to die off, or that a contract's only going to go a certain amount of time, you've got to reseed. Sometimes midway through the year, you've got to plant additional seeds to keep the harvest going at the level that you want it to be going at.
I love it. It's almost like spring and summer. Summer's a continuation of spring.
Yeah.
But also a nurturing of what worked.
Yeah.
When you planted seeds in the spring.
Yeah. And a recognition of what didn't, right?
Yeah.
And then being able to take action with that.
So what comes after summer?
Oh, autumn.
That's the nice way to say it. Fall.
Fall. Yeah.
What's the
harvest,
plan?
baby?
But
harvest.
What's the plan for fall for an individual? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to celebrate if there's a good harvest.
So this is where we go party, we go on vacations, we don't do anything.
Get out, man. Get out of town. Well, you think about, to an extent, yeah, I do mean that. Okay. Like, I think there's something to be learned from, so I grew up in a small farming community. And when harvest was over, there was always a celebration. There was a big dinner, there was a meal, there was something, there was a big celebration with the workers out in the field. You always celebrated the harvest. And, whatever that looks like, it could just be like a dinner to celebrate a great year with your employees. you had a great year at your company and you want to show your employees your thanks, you have a really nice dinner to celebrate that. So I think something about that harvest and acknowledging the people that help make it a success is just essential, because then out of that, gratitude, appreciation are born. People want to be back in again for that time when it's, we're going to go within. I think that's why a lot of times retreats happen kind of in those wintry months.
Yeah.
It's time to go within and think and plan for the year ahead.
I'm trying to think from a sales perspective. So one of the thoughts I had would be investing, right? So it's almost like a reinvestment.
Yeah.
So it's like I see the fruits of my labor, and now I have a harvest. We'll call it like the fruits of my labor, call it money, revenue, profits, whatever,
right.
commissions. And now you're certain things you're kind of going, oh, like I got to put some away. Right. Because I don't know if it's always going to be this good.
Exactly.
Other times you're reinvesting, you're doubling down on what your efforts were. So you're doing a little bit of what you already did in the spring and summer. You're like, let's do more. I'm going to reinvest back, try to let this keep growing and see how long I can keep it going. But no, I think this idea is very smart. I'm glad you came up with it.
Well, I think it was your idea.
Oh, okay.
Because this is the eve of your birthday, isn't it?
I don't know. I was going to write on the whiteboard back here. It's somebody's birthday tomorrow. I just can't remember who. Yeah.
I think it is smart because I think it gives people something to anchor to. And I think during, challenging times, no matter when they are, we need anchors. We just need something that feels solid. And if you know that every 30 days, you're going to have just a different focus, man, that can make all the difference in the world. You're never more than 90 days away from what's next, and people can get their head around that. When it gets difficult is when things feel like it's going to stretch on forever and you can't make sense of it. But if you can break it down into this time of reflection and planning, and then planting, and then growth, and then harvest, that's easy to work with, I think.
I agree. Well, this is a treat for you guys because we're in the same room, and that never happens.
Ever.
But it happened today.
Because Dan's in Phoenix.
So maybe one day it'll happen again, either because he comes out to where I live or I come back to Phoenix again.
I think that's the next trip.
We will see. Peace out.
Signing off
from Phoenix.